welcome back to my channel. So I'm here with an update on my language study practice, specifically what I am doing this summer now that I have more free time. So just going to state up front that this is not what I do during the school year. This is what I am doing during the summer when I have a lot more free time, just so you guys don't think that I always do this much in terms of studying. So I have pulled out all of the notebooks and books and what have you that I use for my language study. I am not, so you guys know I also, if you've seen on my weeklies, for example, I do track reading in French. I do have a book that I'm reading in French. I just didn't pull that out because it's not specifically studying. It's just kind of like added practice sort of thing. So this is specifically related to studying, but also just general language tracking. So let's see how I'm going to go through this. I think we're going to start in my bullet journal first. So let me move this stuff. So I'm going to take you through kind of this week and show you how I would go through and do my language study, like tracking and like what I do and all of that kind of stuff. So I have in here, this week. So for the past few weeks, I have been using this little section of my weekly daily hybrid to track language stuff. So if I go back to last week, you'll see that here I had memorize in Korean, Duolingo in Italian, and then I actually changed to memorize part of the way through the week, journaling in Korean, journaling in Italian, and then reading in French. So what I did for this week, because I'm trying to get more into doing actual lessons and not just reviewing vocabulary, I have changed up my tracker a little bit. So I have memorize streaks, which is both Korean and Italian. I have whether I do a talk to me in Korean or a how to say Korean lesson, so Korean lessons, and whether I do part of a unit in Parlo Italiano, which is the book that I'm using for my Italian studies for the moment. And then I have journaling in Italian and Korean. So I basically, these two, the first and this one, used to be two separate categories because I had two languages, and now I've just mushed them together so that I'd have enough room to do the different lessons. And then I still have reading in French. So you'll notice that I try to have the streaks, journaling, and reading every single day, but I don't necessarily have the lessons every single day. So for example, yesterday I did a lesson in, what did I do? I did a lesson in how to study Korean, and I did a lesson in Parlo Italiano, but on Monday I didn't do either. So in my bullet journal, when I open up in the morning, this is what I see, and I know then, okay, yes, I need to do my language stuff. So from there I move into my language journal. So we're gonna open up to July, and in here, you'll see my tracker. So I have reordered this. I believe last month I had done, so I kind of keep the same tracking thing, but I had my legend in a different order. So I actually reordered my legend to go in the order that I put things down on the tracker. So I always have first is whatever I study, second is writing, so if I journal, third is listening, then I have watching, followed by reading, and then talking. So you'll see I only have one time that I actually spoke Spanish with friends. I do use French on a pretty daily basis, but I don't track it in here because that's just part of daily life. So this is things that I kind of go above and beyond what I would normally do in my daily life kind of thing. So in terms of studying, this can mean anything that I do related to study. It is, have I done something to further my study? So my memorize counts for this. So most days, this is my memorize streak. So I know that I have done at the bare minimum my memorize. But it also means if I do a lesson or if I review a lesson, that falls under this category. So this was one where I've been trying to work on doing lessons more. So I realized that that was not a lot of information. And so for the summer, at least, I wanted to try out a slightly different way. So I pulled out my Brown Traveler's Notebook, because I had started back in like August, I had started a monthly insert that I was actually using for my work and teacher like Traveler's Notebook setup, but I realized very quickly that I didn't need it. So because I thought I was going to use it for the school year, I had already set up all of the months. And so it was kind of going to go to waste because it's already set up for 2017, 2018, and it finishes in September, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, so the last month in here is September. So I decided, okay, well, I might as well use it. So I set it up to track specifically my lessons. So I don't track anything else in here because I have my language journal, but this tracks specifically what lessons I'm doing. So I have this legend over here where I have a T for talk to me in Korean, an H for how to study Korean, PI for Parlo Italiano, which is the book I'm using for Italian. R for if it's a review. So for me, review, especially in terms of Korean, means that, for example, I review a lot of my Talk to Me in Korean lessons. So it's something that I have previously listened to and taken notes on. So then I'll go back and I'll listen to the podcast again and relook through my notes and try and make sentences, like new sentences with more vocabulary that I have. So that's kind of what review means. And then L is for a lesson. So I've sat down, I've listened, or I've read, and I've taken notes. So then on my monthly, I go in and on a day that I've done something, some kind of a lesson, I put one of these little sticker dots. And then I write down what it is using my legend. So for example, when I started doing this, I did a Talk to Me in Korean lesson and a Talk to Me in Korean review on the 2nd. On the 6th, I did a Talk to Me in Korean review. On the 7th, How to Study Korean, I did a lesson. And as well as Parlo Italiano, a lesson. And then you'll see that on the 10th, I did How to Study Korean lesson, Parlo Italiano lesson, and Talk to Me in Korean review. So this way I can see, so for example, this particular week, I studied above and beyond memorize 3 times that week. This week, I've so far only studied once, and I'm filming this on the 11th, so I still have the rest of the week that I can work on filling this in. But that gives me an idea that I can say, okay, it's been over a week since I did a Talk to Me in Korean lesson. I should probably do that soon and wait and do a How to Study Korean lesson a little bit later because I've already done 2. So I'm hoping that this will help me not forget to do lessons, because a lot of times I feel like I get into this habit of I can do my memorize and it's really good vocabulary practice and I can fill out my tracker, but I need to push myself to do more lessons. So that's why I started this monthly kind of overview of what I'm doing. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this, I am doing this for the summer. This is not necessarily something that's going to be sustainable for me in the school year. I will obviously keep trying to do lessons, but I might not necessarily do as many lessons in a given day that I do during the summer. So, all right. So then next up, I have my journaling. So you guys have seen this in here, and this has kind of kept going as I've done. So I have the full spread where I do, for example, Korean, and I have another full spread where I do Italian. So I just do a little bit every single day, and some days are like really simple. I have actually a couple of days in Italian where I've written down like, I don't know what to say today. And then I've had other ones where like 2 or 3 days in a row I'll write down like, I am drinking coffee or something like that. Just like, it depends on how motivated I am or how much like inspiration I have. But I try at the very least to write something in that language each day just to get like practice. Then I've got listening. So for me, this is usually going to be listening to music. And you'll notice that I listen to a lot of music in Korean, and then every once in a while I'll listen to music in Spanish or in Italian. And I actually have Apple Music. So what I've got is, so since I've got Apple Music, what I actually have gone in and done is, for example, I have 2 different playlists in Korean where I've collected some of my favorite songs and artists and all of that. And I have one that's more like kind of a poppy playlist, and I have one that's a little bit calmer. So like I can listen to this while I'm working on stuff or, like before bed. And then this is if I'm like cleaning, for example, I'll put this on, or if I'm just like, doing something that I don't need to concentrate as much, I can put this on. But then I also have under artists, for example, I really like this particular artist, and so I have a couple of her albums that I'll listen to. And I actually recently heard about this artist for Spanish, and so I have a couple of different places that I'll go. One of my other favorite groups for Spanish is, let's see if I can find them, these guys. I really like their music. So I actually just will have this going on. So I put it on my iPad a lot of times because I have a portable like Bluetooth speaker. And so I just put music on and listen to it, and I'll like try and sing along, or especially in Korean where I can't necessarily sing along, I try and actually like pick out words that I recognize. And then I can just move the speaker around the house with me. So if I'm like, doing dishes, or like if I'm in the shower, I can just listen to music and have that kind of background input for the language. So that is what I mean when I say listening to music. And then this darker green is watching. So that is going to be, for example, YouTube videos. So a lot of times I'll mark on here, and you'll notice that it's mostly in Korean. So if I've marked on here, this means that I watched YouTube videos that were in Korean or that had like bits in Korean that I was listening to, or it means watching TV. It's either or. The next thing then is going to be reading and then speaking. So like I said, those 2 are kind of apart. So now in terms of, let's go back to here. So I mentioned how I have this month overview, and you guys have seen how I track things in my language journal. So what do I actually use in terms of studying? So I've showed you guys this notebook before. This is my Korean notebook, but it's actually become pretty much, aside from like the basic like alphabet that I put in, and I have a couple of random little pages, like for example, this was vocabulary from, like all of this was vocabulary from Memrise. But almost everything in this notebook is a Talk to Me in Korean lesson. So this has basically become my Talk to Me in Korean notebook. The lessons are fairly bite-sized, so they don't take up too much space, which is good because this is a really small notebook, and just getting through level 2, lesson 12, I'm already on page 88. So I really didn't want to do any other lessons in here because I'm already like halfway through, and I have, there's at least 6 levels in Talk to Me in Korean, if not more. So this is basically my Talk to Me in Korean notebook. I refer back to this when I'm writing my sentences because it's got a lot of like verb conjugations. It's got some vocabulary. I relook at this when I review Talk to Me in Korean lessons. When I listen to a new lesson, I take notes in here. So this notebook has been very, very useful. What I then decided to do, because I wanted to get into doing how to study Korean lessons, and because I didn't want to use my Talk to Me in Korean notebook, I decided to do the second insert in here and dedicate it to how to study Korean, because they also have a ton of lessons, and they are really like long and full of information. So I know how I am, and the more I have to take notes, the messier they get. If they're like short bits of notes, I'm fine. I can like keep up with it, and I can make it look like fairly neat. The longer they get, the messier they get. So I decided that I was just going to do basically a very like minimalist style notes taking, where I just use like a black gel pen, for example, to take notes. I have gone back in and done a little bit of color coding because they have certain things that come up based on like subject, object, verb, and adjective. And so then I just draw, like I color in around the letter, or I draw a box around that particular topic just so I know kind of what it goes with. And I also have done in a couple of stickers in here, but overall it's just the notes from that lesson. And I also do at the end the sentence practice and the dictation, which are YouTube videos that How to Study Korean has put up so that you can get a little bit more practice. So I like to have that in there so I can see like, oh, I'm doing really well on this, or ooh, that didn't go as well. I need to work on that again. So I've done 2 lessons so far from Unit 1, and it's just like a mass of notes. Like I haven't really like tried to simplify or anything. I basically just read. So to give you an idea, this is lesson 2, and it's all about the particle iga. And so they've got the section of vocabulary. So I don't actually put the vocabulary in this insert. I just do starting from this like introduction and down through all of the grammar. So you'll see like this is just a big like mass of text. And I've pulled out, I haven't copied everything, but I've pulled out a lot of like the important information, all that kind of stuff, but I haven't reformulated a ton. Like I haven't made it necessarily more visually appealing. I've basically just taken the content and put it in this notebook. And that was kind of the goal. I wanted to be able to just take notes and get through that, because especially in the beginning, a lot of this is actually a review from stuff I've learned from Talk to Me in Korean. So I don't necessarily need I want to have a record of it, and I want to get that practice of rewriting, but I don't need it to be really visually pleasing so that I can go back and like very quickly find certain things. Because in addition to this, and also the reason I don't do the vocabulary in this insert, is because I have started this Korean vocabulary notebook. So there's sticky notes everywhere. It is still like a massive work in progress. So I've got different like sticky notes for things that I need to still work on that I just don't have a dedicated page for. This is actually just information for I use microns in here, and so it's the different size pens that I like to use for the different like headers and subheaders and that kind of stuff, like random information. So basically I have come in here and I drew out a bunch of pages of just straight up index. So I think I have like 10 pages of index. It's something like a lot. And this I actually was inspired by the Yellow Journal. He's made a reference book for English because he's an English teacher, and his is a lot more colorful and like you've got like pops of color and it's very clear and all that kind of stuff. Mine is very like minimalist, black and white, but that was just the idea behind what he did was really appealing to me. So basically each topic has its own line, which is why I gave myself so much of an index, because sometimes I have 2 topics on one page, but I want them to be on an individual line so that I can easily reference it. So I basically have my standard index where I've got the thing, so like whatever the topic is, and then the page number after. And I just did the alphabet, and I actually have space down here because I'd like to look into doing, for example, like a cursive calligraphy style alphabet and like a more fast like handwritten alphabet, just to have a reference for how certain letters look and how they're formed, depending on those different styles. So that's why I have space there. And then I just started in with like what was going to be what's one of the hardest things for me to remember, what's something I really need a lot. So numbers. So I've got Sino-Korean numbers, Native Korean numbers, a note on usage, and then this I actually printed out from the Talk to Me in Korean class notes because there's no way I was going to write out all of the ages 1 through 100. Like, no, not that crazy. And then I have questions. So how old are you? And I am years old. So all of this is just like number related stuff. And then after that, I decided to put in stuff with time. So you'll see I have the questions, I have the clock with the times, and then I went through and I did dates. So the days of the week, the months, the days, the week, and how you write out the full date. And so on and so forth. So next up I have time markers. So to me that goes with like the whole date thing. So next was time markers, then interrogatives, how do you ask questions? And then I've got random notes on all of these different pages, and I've started collecting things on larger sticky notes, which let's get a good one. Here. So household objects, for example, I've started collecting. So whenever I go through and do a How to Study Korean lesson, I go through the vocabulary list and I see where I can put it on my different sticky notes in my vocabulary notebook, because it doesn't really make sense for me to have it in with all the rest of the notes that are focused more on grammar. I need to have the vocabulary somewhere else. So I just have started collecting all of these different lists, and once I get enough, I'll start making the page kind of thing. So that is how I'm using this. So grammar stuff is not really going to go in here. I will have, for example, if I have a topic and there's a sentence or a question that really goes with that topic, I'll put that in here, but I'm not going to necessarily have like, how do you conjugate verbs in like present tense, past tense? I don't need that because I've got that in my notebook, in my Talk to Me in Korean notebook. I'm going to have it eventually in here. So this one is really just for vocabulary. So in terms of my Korean studies, that's basically what I am doing. I'm currently only using Talk to Me in Korean and How to Study Korean. I'd like to branch out in the future, but I'm a beginner enough, and there are enough lessons in both of those with both of those sites that I don't really need to go look for other lessons or other information right yet. The next thing I'm really working on this summer is Italian. So I dedicated another insert to Italian, and I'm actually using this book. So I picked this up when I was in Italy a couple of years ago, and I actually had started going through it. I think I got through like part of the way through Unit 6, if I remember. Yeah, somewhere around there. I think somewhere around here is when I kind of stopped. So it's got a bunch of information, and it's done it by like themes. You've got the house, you've got work, you've got introducing yourself, you've got like purchasing things. Okay, so like shopping, I guess. So food, like all that kind of stuff. So it's all by theme. So because I've already done this before, and because I do have a little bit more of a background in Italian, I'm basically just using this to rehash vocabulary and stuff that I already know, at least for the first like 5 or 6 units. So in here, again, I don't necessarily do all of the vocabulary, but I do enough to kind of remind myself. I'm doing verb stuff, so like verb conjugations, certain questions and answers that are really important, interrogative forms, like family, so any of like the big things. So if we look on, if we look in here, so for example, like physical aspect, I basically redid this, like simplified, but I didn't do anything with this dialogue. Like the dialogue is interesting, it's useful and all that, but I don't need that in my notes. So I'm just pulling out like the main information so that obviously I'll still have this notebook this book that I can flip through, but I can go back and look at certain things in this notebook. Also, I find that rewriting it just helps me kind of retain it a little better, and it's been a while since I've actively studied Italian. You know, I listen to music and I can understand a fair amount, but it's been a while since I've actually gone back and reviewed like conjugations and all that kind of stuff and actually tried to advance. Like, I'm not sure if I ever actually got around to learning subjunctive, so I should probably do that soon. So that's why I wanted to have another insert here so that I could go through this textbook. And like I said, I am also using Italian, I'm using Memrise in conjunction with both my Italian studies and my Korean studies for like specific vocab help. But yeah, that is basically my setup. This is still kind of my main like central place for my language studies, but as I'm doing lessons with other things, it just made more sense to have notes in different places for the time being, at least. So I'm sure once the school year starts again, I'll have to re-simplify what I'm doing and kind of rethink what I'm actually doing. But at least for right now, it's really helpful for me to have those notes separated out where I can easily reference them and where I can just easily open up and take notes whenever I'm doing the next lesson. So yeah, that is my language setup, if you will, for today. So like I mentioned before, what I like to do every single day is keep up with my memory streak, which means I'm getting some good vocabulary practice, both in Korean and in Italian. I like to write a couple of lines in my journal in here in both Korean and Italian, and I like to read in French every night. So that's kind of the bare minimum. That's actually probably going to stay pretty stable even when the school year starts. But then with the summer, I'm trying to add in more like, watching TV, listening to music, doing lessons, especially the lessons because those take a little bit more time. And so trying to make the most of having this extra time to kind of advance my studies a little bit more. So if you guys have any comments or questions, or if you guys have any tips and tricks that you guys have for studying languages or studying multiple languages, let me know down in the comments section, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!